Hello, and welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina. My guest today is my sister, Ulanka Beckom, and I want to give you a little bit about her. Ulanka is 52 years old, and she's single, just saying. She's a retired senior chief and currently a government contractor. Ulanka's hobbies are cooking, watching movies, creating artwork. She is so artistic. Working out, she's going to talk about that. Dancing, spending time with friends, music, and supporting family members. Ulanka's ultimate goal is to become an aerospace engineer. Our conversation today with Ulanka is really going to give you some insight of being a sibling or the daughter of someone that has been widowed or widowed. She shares from her experience of things that she thinks and knows from her experience will be helpful. Being on deck for someone, just being in their space and being quiet, understanding that grieving is not over in a year, and a lot of other great tips that she'll share. Thank you for joining me and look forward to you being part of our conversation. Let's get into it now.
Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina. And my guest today is my sister, Ulanka Beckom. Ulanka, thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome, Tina.
And thank you for joining us. So, Ulanka, tell us a little bit about yourself, your interests, how you spend your day, things like that.
Typical day is pretty much wash, rinse, repeat. Get up, go work out, go to work, come home, sit around, watch TV.
You like listening to music?
But I listen to music on the way to work and at work during the day. But it's just wash, rinse, repeat, same thing every day. It's not a lot of variance in what I do daily.
So tell us a little bit about your workout and your favorite music.
The workout I do currently is with Burn Boot Camp. I go there Monday through Friday. The 5:30 class is the goal. I make it 95% of the time.
Yes.
So the type of workout program there is it's a HIIT program, pretty much high intensity interval training type of workout. They concentrate on different parts of the body daily. So there's arm day, leg day, core day, cardio day, everything day. So it just circulates through all of those. My music, I like house music.
Because we're from Chicago.
And then Prince, pretty much any and everything Prince. Love me some Prince.
Okay.
Any and every day of the week.
So, Ulanka has a really hard grind with the workout routine. She recently started incorporating in a stretching process. Share a little bit about that, Ulanka.
So there's this place called Stretch Lab. I just started going there. No, they're not paying us. Burn Boot Camp nor Stretch Lab are paying for any of these endorsements. This is just what's going on. So I go to Stretch Lab. I just started doing that. So you stretch your body yourself. There's only so much you can push yourself. So having someone to help out, along with going to Stretch Lab, I also go to the chiropractor. But going to the Stretch Lab helps to push your body past limits that you can't do personally. And I just keep thinking about the fact that I work out all the time, and I think about athletes. You're like, I watch football, I watch basketball, I watch all these sports, and all these athletes, they're agile and doing all this other stuff. But you have to think about it, because they have somebody like the people at Stretch Lab or other stuff that are there for them on a regular basis to help them to have the maneuverability. So I'm like, I need to do this for myself, so that's why I do it.
So we talked about Ulanka now, but what we didn't talk about a little bit of Ulanka before now. So about your career and what you were doing for a gazillion years before you started this.
So I was in the Navy for 20 years, retired as a senior chief in the Navy. It was a good time. My job was called Gas Turbine Systems Technician Mechanical.
And places you travel to too, which is the fun part.
So they're taking gas turbine engines, and we use those to propel the ship and to propel the generators, and worked on that with a lot of other accessory equipment. So I was pretty much down there with the engine. Well, I was with the engine.
Yes.
So think of your car, but much larger. Think about walking inside your car and working on all the parts.
Oh, wow. And some places you travel, I mean, this is the good part.
Okay.
They want to know.
Oh, yeah. So my last part in the Navy, I was top snipe was the name of my job. So I was the lead engineering for the enlisted personnel. As far as travel, so I've traveled a lot of places, which is one of the funner parts about being in the Navy. When I met my first ship, I met it on deployment.
Wow.
I flew from Norfolk to New York to Spain, then to our ultimate meeting place of Bahrain. After being in Bahrain in a couple of days, they sent the helicopter out. We took a helicopter from Bahrain out to the ship. So, and then from that first deployment, that was a 3-month deployment because I met it for the last half of the deployment.
So you're saying deployments when you were in the service was generally about 6 months?
Most of the time 6 months. Some deployments have been 7 months.
Okay.
But for the most part, 6 months is a normal deployment.
Thank you.
And if you're gone for 3 months, they consider that a deployment also. So you have to be gone for at least 3 months for it to be considered a deployment for the Navy. But so I've gone to Spain, Bahrain, Dubai, UAE, France, Monaco, Italy, Greece, Australia.
Just to name a few.
I've seen probably about 60% of the world.
Ulanka has a map in her study where was it pins that you have up of all the different countries that you traveled? And me and her sister in the military. Actually, I'm thinking about this now. I would say my greatest experience being in the military was being able to come onto Ulanka's ship in full Army gear and actually perform one of her re-enlistments. That was pretty cool.
That was cool. And I don't know if you remember how packed it was. It was super packed. That was on USS First Ship. But but it was packed. It was so we were down in Central, and there were so many people. Like when we walked out, I was like, whoa, people are like standing in the steps and all this other stuff. I was like, wow. There were 3 of us that re-enlisted that day, I believe. No, there were 2 of us. There were 2 of us that re-enlisted.
So in your 20 years of career in the military, from your experience of watching re-enlistments, have you ever seen a sibling re-enlist another and then from a different service or branch?
Once.
Okay.
I can't remember who it was, but there was one other person that I remember that happening with. But that's definitely not
common.
A frequent. No, it's very uncommon.
Yeah, we're pretty cool. So that was neat. Another really neat experience I remember with Ulanka being in the military, and I'm not sure if I have the correct name, but the concept where family members would come onto the ship to be able to go out for a certain distance and come back. I unfortunately wasn't able to do the first one, but I believe my late husband Mark and Catherine, my daughter, was an itty bitty. Was Alexander even born? Okay. Can you share a little bit about what the Navy did offers for that?
So it's a Friends and Family cruise. That one was right before going on deployment. Can't remember which deployment it was. So Mark, Catherine, and Petra came on board.
Oh, okay. I'm Friend's mom. Okay.
Yeah. So they all came on board, and it was funny because one of my friends.
They're listening.
I don't know if I can say her name, but one of my friends, one of my shipmates, I won't say her name, I don't want to put her out there, but one of my shipmates, she was like really drawn to Petra because of the Dutch. And she's Dominican, so she spoke Spanish and she spoke Dutch. Mm-hmm. And so she was like really drawn to Petra. So she was like hanging out with her all day. So that was like really cool. So that was interesting. But yeah. Mark had a good time out there.
So Petra is the mother of my friend Vivian, and she's one of the OGs, and you will hear more about them later. Those have been some of my longest term friends. So yeah, pretty cool. I would say of all of my siblings, you probably spent the most time with Mark. than anybody else with us being in the military and being in proximity, or what would you say?
Yes. I don't I don't know how to, well, maybe because let's see, even before I joined the Navy, so first time I met Mark was when you guys had come home, and the year the Super Bowl, the Bears won the Super Bowl '86. Anyway, so y'all were in town, and you were there for my birthday.
Okay.
First set of professional family pictures, because we had family pictures as younger, but like taken around the house with other friends and family pictures. But our first professional pictures were taken by Mark, and he had all these pictures done, and then you had all the portraits done from those pictures, and Mom and Dad had portraits done from those pictures. And so that was a good time for those. And then so from there, when I was going to junior college in between, he was doing a job out in Illinois. Was it Illinois?
Wisconsin.
Or Wisconsin.
I think it was Wisconsin.
And he stopped and stayed by, hung out at my place a couple of times, like going up and coming back down. Mm-hmm. And then when I was stationed, when I first got stationed here, then staying at your house and seeing. Yeah. So I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Yolanka's a top-rated sibling. We'll see who has to add to that, but I want to say so. So speaking of Mark, how did you find out what was going on when Mark took ill that day?
You called. Venus and I were in the car. We were just coming from a walk.
Oh, okay.
Or a hike. And
where were you? Like,
we were in San Diego.
Okay.
And then you called me, and we were like, what?
Do you recall what I said or how I sound?
You sounded clear, distraught, upset, as expected.
Right.
But you're still clear with everything that you were describing.
Do you recall what I said or a concept of what I shared?
You said that he had had a heart. Did you say he had a heart attack? No, you said he passed out.
Okay.
He hit his head.
Okay.
He was bleeding. He not breathing? He wasn't breathing or something. And you called the ambulance. The ambulance was coming. You're waiting for the ambulance to come. I can't remember everything verbatim this second, but we were just like, what? So then at that point, Venus and I got on the sibling line and started contacting everybody to let them know what we know. No need calling, because Tina has told us, and we're not going to keep on calling her back and forth. So
I'm glad you mentioned the sibling line. With 5 siblings, there's always a lot going on. And we work pretty good together as far as intertwining on different projects or when things come about. So generally the first sibling that you contact becomes the owner of the situation. And they're responsible to contact all the other siblings, let them know what's going on. And the sibling that is in distress, try to eliminate or reduce the conversation to them so they can focus on what's going on. In fact, my children and my sister's Venus children, they go, the siblings, they call us the unit a lot of times. Instead of, they'll speak to one person or another, but they go, oh, the siblings are involved in this. And it's like a whole thing. So I think that's pretty cool to have 5 siblings. And we really do get along pretty good. Any memories besides what we talked about that you have of Mark, or things that you think of?
See the camera.
Okay.
Lots of hunting.
Yes.
Always winter deer meat.
Had you had venison before, Mark?
Once before, because one of Dad's friends had brought something home.
Okay.
And, had some before then.
Okay.
Putting up the swing set in the backyard, because I helped do that.
So let me back up a little bit. Your girl ain't that handy when it comes to saws and wood. But my sister right here, remember that job being the engineer in the ship? She could build just about anything. So the house that we have in Gloucester, Mark wanted to put a swing set up for Catherine Alex. Yolanka and Mark put that together. Tina was making sandwiches and lemonade and providing all the different things they needed.
It's still out there, right?
Huh? It still is out there.
So that's been over 20 years.
Yeah, because Catherine's 26, 27, so it's been out there a long time. So not only can she do it, but it stays and it's handy. So, so with my sister and my mom living next door, I get the benefit of her handiwork also. And what Yolanka did not mention is her love to cook. She has the ability to just whip up things from taste, and they are always yummy. I'm always posting about something Yolanka made, and I was like, well, do you need a taster? Is there something I can come over to do? So that's something else about my sister that I personally really enjoy.
Well, thank you.
Sue, going back to the reason why I actually have Ulanka here is I wanted her to talk about, because she has been with me the longest in this process as far as from Mark passing over time. Ulanka lived in California, as she mentioned, when she first heard the news of Mark's passing. But tell me if you could share with us something, or so, what do you recall from the moment you heard about Mark's passing till showing up in Virginia?
What I remember?
Yes. As far as the sibling conversation and that decision and what was going on in the background that I was not aware of.
I guess the first thing was, who's going out there? Who's going first? And Jesse headed that up real quick. We were like,
Really?
Like, we were on the phone. I don't know where that happened. I'm just like, oh. He was like, he can travel and be in transit with his job, and he made that happen. Because he was there overnight.
Literally.
And he was on the ground, and he was definitely on the ground doing all the work. And that was impressive. I didn't know he had that in him. I was like, oh, okay. Good to know. He got there, took care of all of that. And then we got there.
What did that look like, or what was the sense? And the reason why I'm asking that, we see people where they are now, and it's 5 years since Mark passed, but being there initially and what that looked like, and it being a sister and being concerned.
Initially being there, you were more focused. You're always focused, but you were more focused on what was going on at that moment. So we had the funeral going on. This is going on here. So there wasn't like a breakdown at that moment. So you were still yourself, but after the funerals where more of the breakdown began to happen.
And what did that breakdown look like? It can be as graphic and as horrible as it is.
It was, no, it wasn't horrible. Definitely wasn't horrible. More shopping.
Retail therapy. There was a bit of that.
A few more.
Crying, separation.
A little crying.
Fog.
Yeah, a little fog, crying, separation, fog. A little bit more wine than normal.
Okay. White wine.
But overall, I wouldn't say that it was anything crazy.
Or extreme.
No, nothing. Nothing extreme at all.
I wouldn't, if I can, I would not use the word crazy per se, because people can look at that differently. But knowing my sister, I think she's referring more to something extreme, something that was not manageable. Now, what prompted you as far as, so my sister Ulanka showed up, and from what I recall, still had her coat on and told me, I'm moving to Virginia. So that was an extreme situation. She had a move left in the Navy, but based on the circumstance and a lot of other things, that was a big part of you deciding to relocate. Share a little bit about that process.
So Tina had been on us for years to everyone to move back to Virginia, because that was the ultimate place for her to retire, because they have the house in Gloucester. Mm-hmm. So her and Mark retire in Gloucester, and everybody moves to Virginia, and we have one big happy life from Chicago to around the world, and everybody stays in Virginia. So I was in Virginia. I was still in San Diego, had just been under a year of retirement, trying to figure out what I was going to do next, if I was going to stay in San Diego or leave San Diego. Mm-hmm. So I decided, once Mark passed away, I was like, let me talk to my job and see if I can move to the Norfolk office, because they do have an office in Norfolk. So I talked to them, and they said, okay. And I was like, all right, sweet. So that way I could move to Norfolk and be closer. And that way, because you're in Pennsylvania, it's a 6-hour drive rather than trying to catch a plane and going through the hassle and all that. I could just drive up there whenever need be. So I just did what needs to be done.
And I appreciate you for that. So when she says driving up when needs to be, I was still in our family home in Pennsylvania, living there at this point. Catherine was away in the military. Alexander was in the military. Mark had passed. So it went from November of 2016 to being a full house with 4 people to literally me being in the house alone. my closest family member was Chicago and California. So for my sister to make that motion to relocate was extremely helpful. And our garage was packed. So now I'm in the winter of Pennsylvania, no one to shovel the snow, needing to do something with the car. How was that experience cleaning out the garage and coming and doing all that? What do you remember from that?
There's a lot of stuff. It's multifaceted. So there's the fact that there's a lot of stuff. Then there's the fact that there's a lot of memories in all the stuff.
Yes.
It's like, what do you keep? What do you not keep? What do you need? What do you not need? Do I throw this away? Do I sell this? It's just a matter of, do you give it more life? Do you just move on? It's a lot of thought that goes into all of that.
So that right there, that's a really good point. You being my sister and these not actually being your items versus me actually the owner. I found when that was going on in my mind going through it, it was hard sometimes to pick up a box and say I'm going to go through that versus being taken back into the memory of the most minor item. How did you coast me through that? Or how did that work?
I guess kind of like the hoarder shows, you ask the person, you ask, do you need this? Do you not need this? How are you going to use this? How are you going to use? That's how we came up with the little the toolbox, kind of going through all those things, figure out which tools were needed, which tools might not be needed. The 50 million extension cords, realized that we don't need 50 million extension cords to go forward. But it's just a matter of hand over hand, patience.
Okay. So that is huge, because to be able to have patience, because somebody may find themselves going through the belongings of their loved one that are commingled or things that are separate, and really difficult to relinquish those things, especially if you're relocating, if you're downsizing. That's a big thing to go through. I think from my experience, there were points where it was helpful to have somebody, and then there were some things that may have been frustrating that you couldn't go through that I had to go through on my own. So that process of being able to have somebody to work with you and be patient.
Yeah.
That's really... Now, the one part after we got through everything, we now had a whole garage that was empty, and we took bikes and rode them in circles inside the garage to celebrate the idea that we had accomplished that. What have you found as being a sister? And also in this regards, let me shift actually a little bit to our mom. So where Jessie was the first person on deck for me, how was that experience as it went with our mom for you?
So Denise was actually the first person on deck for Mom.
Our oldest sister. You
Right.
were absolutely right, yeah.
So Denise was there to help our mom and get her around and do the things that needs to be done.
She was there at the hospital with Mom. And yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and so like I know it's speaking of that. So when Mom saw Dad, she said that she's like, I know that's not him. So she was all right.
Oh,
Like,
that his
okay.
soul had left
Right.
his body.
She was overall pretty calm.
Okay. I'm way more emotional than our mother, as you probably already saw.
Yeah, but yeah. So then we got to Chicago, and
Well, you got there
actually
first.
before. Did I get there first?
Yeah, I came afterwards. You were there for about a week before I was.
No. Jesse was in town first also. Jesse was in town first and left last. Yeah.
Okay.
That was Jesse on the Jesse on the ground floor again.
Okay. Remember differently. We'll find out when we talk to Jesse who was there first.
Yeah, he was on the ground. He hit the ground running.
Okay.
He took care of a lot of stuff. We together as a family took care of things before I got there. Which was before I got there. Once I was there, I think it was we were all there together because Mom was like, "I'm moving to Virginia with you." I was like, "All right, we're gonna make that happen."
Okay.
Were we all together? I can't remember. But yeah, so I was like, "All right, that's what's happening. Mom's moving to Virginia." So, but yeah, taking about doing the whole house. That was, I guess there was probably more emotion in that
Okay.
because that's the house where we grew up. And,
Okay. That's fair.
but still, again, asking mom, what do you want to keep? What do you not want to keep? We know, of course, that we're going to keep all the paperwork. But the important thing is to make sure that she was a part of the decision-making process.
Okay.
You don't want to just come in someone's house and take all their stuff and say, this isn't important. That isn't the way to go. If they want to discard things later, they discard things later or sell things or do whatever. But you never, ever want to tell somebody that your life is not important. That, especially at a time where they're grieving, that can spiral things into a totally uncontrollable realm.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. That is a really good point, because I do recall as we were going through everything, this is the home that our mom had raised our children for several decades. So that was not an easy lift. In fact, it got to a point when we were going through everything, we were watching her being kind of distraught. She had already identified what to keep, what not to keep. But now watching the process of those items come out of the house became a little overwhelming. And us going back and talking to her and making the decision for her to come to Virginia and Jesse to stay behind and finish some of that heavy lifting without her actually having to witness it. That was easier, I think, played out for her. So that is a really good point. The idea of not making someone release things that they're not ready to do, because that's part of their grieving process. Thank you for bringing that out.
You're welcome. Because that's another thing. When the pie came, she wound up getting rid of a lot of stuff then because
it was time now.
It's right. But and I thought it was interesting. I don't know if it's because she was older, had been in a relationship so much longer, but I know that mom said that she has talked to dad about some things before, because they talked about if he passed away or if she passed away, how things would look and what they would do. But then again, mom is a lot more
stoic.
Yes, than dad, because dad would have been way more emotional. And
back to
and we
who
know
I
that.
kind of favor a little bit.
Yeah, and so, but mom was able to release and go forward a lot easier.
I think when mom and I spoke, she mentioned how often dad told her that he was going to leave this world. And so, as you're saying, those conversations led into her being prepared. Not that it wasn't difficult when it happened, but the idea that Mark died randomly on vacation, that's a totally different setup. So how it's going to impact you and moving forward with that loss is a big part of it too.
Yes.
That is absolutely true. And I connect also just what you said. And when the pie came, we moved a lot of items here to Virginia that I could have let go of in retrospect, but I just wasn't ready.
Right.
So that happened too. All the stuff came to the place I was living, and it was like, what are we going to do with all of this? And slowly, as time happened and unpacking and doing things, I was able to release those. That is a big thing, because when that person is no longer here, you're left with so many things and trying to figure out what to keep, whether you have to address that with children or their siblings or loved ones, things that people may want to have. That is a big part of it. That is a real big part of it. So what have you seen, or let me ask you this differently. What would you share as far as your experience, someone being the daughter of a parent that has been widowed and then being the sister of somebody that's been widowed? How you can help them or what to do?
The biggest thing is just to be there for them. A lot of times you want to just say, what do you need? But when someone's grieving, they don't know what they need. The biggest thing they need is someone to be there. You don't have to hold someone's hand. You just sit on the couch and watch TV with somebody. Just having somebody in a room, especially someone that's used to being with someone on a regular basis.
Yes.
So sometimes people just want company, somebody to talk to. Stay on the phone and talk all night. It's not, you're grieving with that person, but you're not grieving how that person is grieving that has had this immediate thing happen to them. Having a spouse pass away, having a child pass away, whatever it may be. But just being there to assist where need be. Come in to cook a meal. They might not be able to cook a meal, I don't know. But who knows, who knows what it might be going on. But be there and don't, and don't belittle anybody's grieving. Everyone grieves in their own way. Some people are extremely emotional. Some people are somber. But just because the person over here is somber doesn't mean that they aren't grieving. They're just doing it in a different way. They might break out and be extremely emotional later, but it's just being there for them in the moment and thereafter. And the grieving process is a never-ending process. It's not something that it just stops.
Right.
Because, oh, the year's up, so I'm done. That isn't how grieving works.
Yes.
You can have a dream one day. You could be walking down the street and see something. A leaf could fall. Who knows what it is? Anything can remind you of that person. And just because you're grieving over that person doesn't mean you don't have love for the people that are with you now. It's two totally different things.
Those are some really good points, Ulanka. Thank you. The ability to be present with someone and not push the moment to make it something else is huge. Just being in that space. And you're absolutely right. When you have been accustomed to being in the company with someone, having someone that you can trust with your emotions to be there with you is huge. A really good point you also made was that the grieving process is not something that you kind of check mark and it's over. There are different stages that they describe of grief, but those are not linear. You can have one after another in between each other, and they're not smooth and easy. It is a very messy process of grief. And being honest to allow people in your circle that will allow you to grieve and not judge how your grieving process is, that is pretty big. Thank you for bringing that out. Well, I am so glad to be able to have my sister Ulanka here and have this conversation because, as I talked about before, Widowhood Real Talk with Tina is about my hood. And my sister Ulanka is a huge component of my hood. She literally lives next door. She was my first best friend because we are born within order of each other. So the people in your lives and your hood are really important. And Ulanka is important to me, and I'm glad that she can be here. We are actually heading to Texas today, and my next guest will be my brother Jesse, who you will have an opportunity to hear from. Thanks for being here with us, and have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
We just finished an episode of Widowhood Real Talk with Tina with my sister Ulanka. Ulanka's probably the quietest one of the bunch, but I am so glad that she joined me today and had this conversation. There are so many nuggets that she shared, and I'm just grateful for her. I'm grateful for her for not shying away, not being afraid to be in this with me. I'm glad that she, even though she may be the quietest of us all, that she really opened up and shared a lot of good information. And I hope that that will be helpful to you and your community of being in the hood of this grief journey. Thanks for being here with us, and have a good day.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.